Hey everyone at Dine Sports. Welcome to our breakdown of UFC 299, O'Malley versus Vera 2 this weekend in Miami, Florida. Probably one of the best fight cards we will see this year. Obviously at the top, O'Malley making his first title defense, but just an absolutely stacked card from middle of prelims all the way to the top, fight after fight. Very excited for this one. As always, joined by Nick here to break down the fights with me. How are you feeling about the card this weekend?
Love it, man. Totally stacked. I mean, we've been dealing with some of these Apex cards that have been kind of hit or miss. So I feel like I say this every time we do this stream because we only do them for the pay-per-views, but it is like a breath of fresh air here. Some of these matchups are awesome. I mean, really, top to bottom, this entire card has a lot of star power. So I'm looking forward to it. Really strong main card, really strong prelims, too. A lot of spots we can look to be betting as well. Some interesting line movement throughout the week. But yeah, I mean, we're doing a little bit earlier this week. So things could change, but I already think we have some pretty good reads and definitely looking forward to breaking things down with you.
Yeah, I'm excited. As you said, a card just littered with stars. Let's start at the top with the superstar, Sean O'Malley, the Sugar Show, looking to avenge the one loss on his pro fighting record against Marlon Vera. Fight that took place a few years ago. Leg kicks great from Marlon Vera early. Eventually getting O'Malley to the mat due to injury and finishing him there. A fight that we need to see run back. I personally think O'Malley is the better fighter of these two. Obviously, what Vera has done over the course of his UFC career, very impressive. A lot of good wins, a lot of gritty 5 round fights. We've seen him prevail. Grind out decisions when he's maybe not landing the most volume in his fights, but he's landing the strikes that do matter. And that was sort of the case his last time out, fighting at UFC 292. It was a sloppy win against Pedro Munoz. It looked like Vera got it done. He certainly did, but not the most convincing or aesthetically pleasing decision. That's kind of what you're going to get out of Vera, pressuring forward a lot, looking to land those big shots, big counters, effective from both stances. The leg kick, I think, is again going to tell a huge part in this fight here, with Vera looking to chop down the legs of O'Malley, keep him from moving on the outside, and making him a more, a target that he can close the distance on and attack. That's not going to be the case if O'Malley's able to, fight his fight here. It's not only a fan-friendly style, high-level kickboxing, but he has great footwork. He's lightning quick. What this kid's been able to do so far here at bantamweight, I think it's just the tip of the iceberg. And we're going to see a lot more out of O'Malley the more that we see him challenged in these types of fights. Stylistically, I don't think Vera poses too much of a challenge. It's obviously going to be those power shots getting through and hurting O'Malley, as was the case in the first fight. One would think him to have a slight edge grappling, but I don't really expect him to be shooting for takedowns here. In O'Malley, in a 5 round fight, perhaps just landing a timely one or two if O'Malley allows him. But I think it's going to be back and forth. I think we're going to see a moment or two where Sugar maybe stuck on the cage or hurt for a moment, but largely he's going to be landing the better strikes here in this fight. Serious knockout power for a bantamweight, but Vera's ultra durable. Like, we haven't seen him bleed in the octagon. I think that may change here, but it's going to be tough to predict a knockout. I think O'Malley's going to look the better fighter over the course of a 5 round fight here, and make good on his first title defense. Eager to hear your thought. I think I'll just mention as well, 280, kind of a steep price to pay, just because we've seen this fight before and Vera did get the win. I would use O'Malley as a parlay piece here. Again, not necessarily betting him inside the distance. But I could see him easily winning if this is extended to a decision.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. I think you covered it well, kind of from a 3 round angle. But the fact that it's a 5 round fight does add some nuance. I'm with you. I'm picking Sean here to win. I'm certainly not as confident as you, though. So, first and foremost, I'll give Sean his flowers. I mean, we were in person for both these guys' last fights. We saw Sean capture that title. I was on Sterling that night. But yeah, I mean, O'Malley got it done. I mean, the planets seemed to align for him there. And we were talking that night. We said, well, the easiest title defense would probably be Marlon Vera if he picked that up next. And what do you know? The UFC is trying to build this star here, and I think it makes a lot of sense. He's getting his pink shorts here, which is good to see. Definitely have their marketing machine behind him, but it can't be unsaid that, I mean, Vera is very popular as well. One of the only fighters on the roster with over 1 million Instagram followers. Take that for whatever it's worth. But today in media, he had two scrums. There was enough media there that they had to do a whole second interview for him just in Spanish after the fact, which I thought was pretty interesting. Should be a pretty split crowd here. Obviously, Boston was super pro O'Malley. I don't think that's a major factor. What are the major factors? I mean, O'Malley is a lengthy striker, but Vera actually has longer reach than one might expect. Only about a 2 or 3 inch reach advantage for O'Malley here. I'm a little bit surprised to see that. What O'Malley does well, obviously the footwork, obviously the punches, but that teep kick up the middle, I think, is going to be very important for him here. Just keeping Vera at a distance, not allowing him to kind of crash that distance and land those power shots that we've seen him land against the likes of Vaughn, against the likes of Dominic Cruz, etc. O'Malley's going to have to keep his distance, and O'Malley is the faster starter here. He throws more than, or he lands more than 3 significant strikes per minute compared to Vera. But the interesting thing is we've never seen O'Malley extended past the third round. And he looks pretty good late in fights. I mean, we go back to the Peter Yan fight. I mean, it's just rare that we see him really extended. Even in the Moutinho fight, where he landed like 1 million strikes, he did start to tire a little bit. So I think the one path for Vera here is to start slow like he always does, take that damage early. I mean, he dropped 2 rounds to Font, he dropped 2 rounds to Dominic Cruz, and then he came back and took over. I think that is why this is a very interesting fight and why I think the line's a little bit too wide. When odds makers open this, excuse me, it was around a -200. I think that was about accurate. Now we're looking at a -3. Definitely feels inflated in my opinion. Obviously, O'Malley does draw a lot of that quote unquote casual money from fans. Not saying you are. Again, I'm backing O'Malley as the favorite here, but I don't like the price at all. I will say, I mean, typically, yeah, O'Malley's clearest path is to find that KO. Vera really never been dropped, certainly never been KO'd. So it's going to be tough for him to do. And my concern is that if O'Malley is starting to accumulate damage, maybe he chases that KO and that could compromise his gas tank. So my one fear here in backing O'Malley is the fourth and fifth round. We know those are usually the best rounds for Vera, and we don't know what we're going to see from O'Malley in those rounds. Obviously, I expect him to come in with his conditioning on point. I know his cardio will be on point, but yeah, I don't know. It just gives me some pause just knowing that Vera usually comes on late, and we don't know what Sean's going to look like in the fourth and fifth, and we have seen him kind of fade a little bit in the third at times. So I agree O'Malley's the better technical striker. This should be a striking match. I don't expect either of these guys to grapple much. I honestly think Sean will be fine if Cheeto does take him down once or twice. It's not like he's a super big submission threat or anything like that. He's not super heavy on top. If we're looking at the Sandhagen fight, which I think Sean and his team will certainly be doing, the movement was too much for Cheeto. The speed was too much for Cheeto. But what really made the difference there was him mixing in those takedowns, which kept him guessing and made it even more difficult for him to close the distance against the longer fighter. So I like O'Malley here. I think he gets it done probably by decision, but I think after 3 rounds, if you're heavy on O'Malley, you're going to see that line inflating. Maybe put a little bit of hedge on Cheeto late because that is probably the one window he's going to have to maybe pull off something miraculous. The leg kicks are certainly going to be a concern early here, but that was a perennial nerve drop, which is definitely a freak injury more than anything else. Some have spoken this week about how Sean, when Vera was on top, really did nothing in his guard, but I think it was because he was injured there. He kind of knew the fight was over. It is what it is at that point. I think if he does find himself on his back here, he should be able to work himself back to his feet, but Vera does have good ground and pound, so obviously just not a position you're going to want to be in. The first time they met, I believe it was the Apex too. This is going to be a bigger cage. That certainly favors O'Malley here as well. But yeah, I like him. I think he gets it done probably by decision. Would I be shocked if he knocked him out? No, it's just something we've never seen before. I always say I don't like to bet on something I've never seen. And yeah, unfortunately, we haven't seen O'Malley in the fourth or fifth either. I do think his cardio is going to be on point for this camp. He knows, and we've heard in interviews, that Vera's greatest strength is that cardio and durability. So I'm sure they game plan around that. And yeah, I like O'Malley here to kind of win the decision, probably somewhat convincingly, but if he starts to fade at all late in the third, I mean, things could get ugly really quick because Vera's cardio is seemingly infinite. So I'm with you. I'm on O'Malley. Just a little bit concerned about those late rounds. We don't know how they're going to look. And those are Vera's best rounds historically.
I mean, yeah, O'Malley would start to look like the bantamweight Mike Tyson if he's going to knock out Cheeto Vera. That'd be sick. But I'm even excited just to see 25 minutes of him on film doing his thing, styling on Vera here to decision. But and still, either way for me. The co-main event at lightweight. This one is sick with Dustin Poirier returning to action to face the up-and-coming Benoit Saint Denis, who is on quite the streak of finishes since joining the UFC. Um, it's an interesting fight. Poirier coming off that loss to Justin Gaethje in that BMF bout. Tough to see him knocked out like that by a head kick. Obviously, I think Poirier's taking the time he needs to build back up, get into a good camp, and prepare for another killer here at lightweight. Um, but I mean, Saint Denis certainly has the pop to threaten Dustin in a lot of the positions we're going to see these two engage. First and foremost, Saint Denis' most recent win was also by head kick, finishing Matt Frivola. That, as well as a lot of other weapons, should be available to him here, facing a boxing heavy Dustin Poirier. Saint Denis is tricky. It's southpaw versus southpaw here, which I know Poirier's had plenty of time training that. A lot of this camp spent with Mateusz Gamrod, who's also on the card. But it is a tricky look, especially against someone like Saint Denis, who's also super effective when bringing fights to the mat as needed. This guy is very good wrestling. Obviously a submission threat, but what we've seen him do with his hands and just when he turns on the aggression, putting together 10 punch combinations, it's sometimes like Dustin Poirier and what you've seen Saint Denis do in the pocket since joining the UFC. So certainly a guy that's on the rise. More attributes of Saint Denis that I'm really a fan of: his cardio seems nonstop, his durability. We've seen him get dropped before, get take an absolute beating in his UFC debut, and not quit. This guy is made of iron, and I think the key factor in this fight, again, a 5-rounder, as we get into those rounds 3, 4, 5, Saint Denis is still going to want it, still going to be moving forward, and trying to implement his game plan on Dustin Poirier. I think Poirier is super high level too, and honestly, the value side, if you're getting a plus 180 currently in this fight against Saint Denis. But I do find it hard to back him in this spot, coming off that loss against somebody who I've been all over in Saint Denis. Somebody who looks so complete and that I think could thrive against a lot of these top level lightweights. So certainly don't fault anyone for going with the hometown guy in Poirier here, but I'm going to take Saint Denis.
Yeah, it's interesting. There was a lot of back and forth about Poirier would even take this fight. He did a good job negotiating with the UFC to get more money. But now that fight week's here, I mean, I do find myself on the Saint Denis side. I don't like what Dustin's been saying in interviews this week. He said this is a fight he won't have his kid in attendance for. He's talking about how he doesn't need to be in there for a check anymore. He's just fighting for him. He knows the threat that Benoit Saint Denis presents. And yeah, I mean, stylistically, it's a really tough matchup. So Poirier dominates most of the time against strikers. We've seen that time and time again where he struggles is against grapplers. Saint Denis averages almost 5 takedowns per 15 minutes. He's definitely going to be able to implement that part of his game here, and I think he can hang with Dustin on the feet long enough to make that his main kind of game plan in this matchup. I mean, on the feet, obviously Saint Denis dangerous. Poirier coming off the head kick KO. I mean, one could maybe compare him to what we saw out of Volk coming back after the Islam head kick KO. Certainly seemed his durability took a step back. And yeah, Poirier is getting up there in age. He's starting to talk about retirement. I mean, he has the hot sauce business. He has 100 other things going. And I don't know how deep he was in camp for a fight until those late negotiations happened for this one. So I don't know. It's tricky. When Saint Denis came in, I liked him a lot. I admittedly faded him against Bonfim. That was maybe the worst play I made of the past year or two. But I'm a total believer now. I had him against Moises Anfrivola. He is just an absolute monster in there. He was special forces for France. This guy has actual kills to his name. Just the mentality of a guy like this. I mean, he's wise beyond his years, but also dangerous beyond what any human should be in terms of mindset. So I really like him here. I think he's an absolute savage. I think the UFC knows what they're doing and putting him in this spot against Poirier. And yeah, I mean, It's just tough because Dustin usually, I mean, we go back to the Hooker fight. Hooker was pouring it on early. I mean, we go back to the Chandler fight. Chandler was pouring it on early. He was able to kind of withstand that and then turn things around in the later rounds to win those fights. I don't know if that opportunity is going to be there against Saint Denis, especially if this fight hits the mat. Saint Denis underrated, excuse me, submission grappling as well. Chandler did get some wrestling going in their matchup or his matchup with Poirier, but didn't really have the submission threat to finish that fight. He did come close though. So yeah, I honestly think this is a good fight for Saint Denis in terms of style. It's just two guys who seem to be headed in opposite directions. And I mean, when the fight was announced and I saw the line, I was with you. I'm like, there's probably value on the Poirier side. Am I going to be shocked if he somehow pulls this off? But I mean, his path is probably via KO. And after seeing what Zaleski put on Saint Denis in his debut, I just don't know if this guy would go down if Poirier even had a baseball bat and was just swinging at his forehead. It's just crazy, crazy durability against a guy who's probably going to need to drop him or knock him out to win the fight. I think the cardio is pretty level. But yeah, I think Poirier, if he sees that way out, maybe he takes it here just knowing he could retire in front of a home crowd. I mean, he trains in Florida, this fight taking place in Miami. It's not like UFC's booking events in Louisiana anytime soon. So I like St. Denis here to get it done, probably inside the distance. I'll probably bet him inside the distance, pull him into parlays. And yeah, it does feel like the line's a little bit disrespectful just because of what Poirier's done. But in terms of styles and in terms of age and just where these guys are headed right now in their respective careers, I think it's pretty accurate, honestly. So I'm on BSD here. I think he gets it done probably within the first 2 or 3 rounds.
Yeah, and I mean just like size as well. Like Poirier said, this is the lightest he's been. I trust that he
Yeah.
did have a good camp. He's been training a ton, ATT. But yeah, he's going to be small against this guy Saint Denis, who again he debuted at welterweight and took all that from Zaleski dos Santos. So uh, we will see come this weekend. Another great fight, the featured bout at welterweight. The debut of Michael Venom Page, a short underdog against fan favorite Kevin Holland. It's an interesting fight here. What do you like of the newcomer Michael Venom Page, and what are your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, it's interesting. When this fight was announced, I was like, I'm probably going to go with Holland here. I mean, he's been fighting the better fighters. The knock on Page his whole career has been that he's kind of a can crusher. I mean, he has had good performances against good competition. Bellator certainly, if not the second, the third best promotion for mixed martial arts in the world. But wins over Douglas Lima, a very close decision. I mean, he fought well against Logan Storley, who's a pure wrestler. Paul Daly, another signature win. He does have quality wins on his resume, but mostly against guys who are kind of beyond their years. But I think the UFC's knows what they're doing with this matchup, and this is why I'm kind of changing my pick. If I thought Holland was going to go in there and try to grapple, I think he'd probably be the side. But he's never done that, and I don't think we're going to see that here anytime soon. So I'm going to go with Page. We saw Holland against Wonderboy have some success early. Page is even longer and a little bit tougher to read in some ways. Um, I don't know. It just feels like these are going to be two guys standing and trading. Page is the sharper striker. Holland's usually the sharper striker in most of his matchups, but he hasn't really run into anyone like this at all. And yeah, I don't know, man. I do think the level of competition, if you're checking that box for either fighter, it probably does favor Holland. But yeah, I mean, Holland usually relies on his reach. He's not going to have that here. Page is totally, I don't know. The UFC has their marketing behind Page. I've seen future features constantly all week on Michael Venom Page. They're posting all over Twitter about it. So yeah, I don't know. I think they want him to win here. They put him on the main card in the feature bout for a reason. I don't think there's really any reason to promote Kevin Holland that way at this time. So they're gonna get Page this win and maybe set him up for that Wonder Boy fight, which would be amazing. You could probably headline a fight night with that in front of a crowd, and everyone's gonna be happy because these two very loose strikers. I mean, you could dig into the Page style a little bit more than I did. I'm really just talking about some of the intangibles here more than anything else, but definitely the older fighter, definitely late in his career, but I think they know what they're doing here with this matchup. Holland's similar, but probably a step behind. Probably goes the distance. Holland is very durable. We even saw it in the Wonder Boy fight. Just wouldn't go down, but I don't know, man. I think Page just stays a step ahead. If I heard somewhere that Holland was going to try to grapple aggressively, I'd maybe change my pick. But everything I've heard so far has kind of gone against that. So I'm on Page here. I think this is one of those picks where you kind of just follow the lead of the marketing team. And I think they do want to get MVP a win. They're paying him a ton this late in his career. He has kind of a short shelf life, in my opinion. So we'll see what they can kind of squeeze out of him in these next few fights. But I think they want this Holland fight. Then they could have him headline against a Wonder Boy, and then maybe from there he's in line for a title shot or something like that. But yeah, I love Kevin Holland. Great fighter. Definitely tough. Should be fun if these guys are throwing. But Page definitely the better technical striker of the two, and it is a fight I expect to mostly take place on the feet.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the UFC marketing. Obviously, a long way to go, but a welterweight title fight between Page and Leon Edwards, one would think that that would be huge over in Europe. Page coming out of the European circuit and one of the best karate practitioners in mixed martial arts. We see what he's able to do from both stances and when utilizing his kicks. Very quick twitch in his attacks, and somebody who I think again, yeah, you highlighted the matchup Poland had with Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, and it's going to be a pretty similar style fight here. Michael Venom Page, karate beating kung fu by getting in, landing the more effective shots. We saw Holland stunned on a few occasions in that fight, and yeah, while he's never been knocked out in his career, I feel like that could come this weekend for Holland if he's not careful here against Michael Venom Page. I think the reason this line is close and is because it is going to be favored to go the distance. I think Holland, if nothing else, has proven to be durable. We saw him dropped with a headbutt, but not much else in his entire UFC tenure. And Michael Venom Page isn't necessarily known for his power, but it's the precision striking that's going to be a key factor in this fight. If Holland's lights do get turned out, he's going to need to keep the pressure on Page, throwing high enough volume to keep pace. That was an issue for him in the Wonder Boy fight because while he was trying to land more strikes, per minute, they were not to the effect as were the ones coming back from Wonder Boy. Yeah, you said it well for Page too, a can crusher, but a lot of better wins lately. I mean, that finish of Goti Yamauchi his last time out, I liked a lot. I mean, you bash a guy's knee and it
A little fluky, but
explodes.
yeah.
A little fluky, but still, we've seen him hurt guys like break bones and the like before. And then I do like the durability we saw at a Page in a bare knuckle fight against Mike Perry, another UFC caliber fighter. This is certainly a guy who belongs here. And, getting dog money here in a favorable stylistic matchup. Holland, again, if he would shoot, he beat a lot of guys. Probably beat Wonder Boy, but Holland doesn't shoot for takedowns. And, standing and striking against one of the best to do it, I think he's going to have a long night. So I am on MVP in the spot, the short underdog. We will move on now to another bout at welterweight. This is a fun one with Jack Della Maddalena, a small favorite, going up against Gilbert Burns. Can categorize this a bit of a striker versus grappler bout. Obviously, Della Maddalena has proven to be well-rounded, but the best work is done with his hands and exceptional boxing. This guy lands more than 7 significant strikes per minute and is effective boxing out of both stances. When it comes to these two on the feet, there's really no comparing. Gilbert Burns, powerful, good overhand left, serviceable on the feet. He struggles against top-level strikers, and a guy like Maddalena should be able to light him up. We've seen Gilbert dropped with small shots before, and I do worry about his durability. If Maddalena is able to get his hands going and really put a beating on Burns here, but I think it's going to be a fairly competitive fight, at least early. The past 2 showings for Della Maddalena have been a bit underwhelming. They were split decisions against Kevin Holland, okay, but against Basil Hafez, a bit less, inspiring for me. I think Gilbert Burns does provide a significant step up in competition for Della Maddalena. And we will see his takedown defense tested, but thus far in the UFC, he has stopped 82% of shots against him. It's also worth noting Gilbert Burns in his last fight lost to Bilal Muhammad, not able to secure a single takedown. He is reliant on it to get the win in my eyes. And even if he's able to ground Della Maddalena once or twice, we've seen this kid hit switches, get out of chokes before. He certainly seems like the rightful favorite to me. And at the moderate price tag, I probably will have some money behind Della Maddalena this weekend. Burns still definitely a top 15 welterweight, but I don't really view him as one of the best in the world, as a lot of people and myself had a year or 2 ago. So I'm on Della Maddalena here, getting another win. I've yet to fade him in the UFC.
Yeah, so this is another interesting fight. When I initially saw the matchup announced, I was like, okay, this is super linear. I mean, if Burns can get the takedowns, he's probably going to be able to submit him. But the more I dig into it, I'm just not really sure that's going to happen. I mean, it has been rare that we've seen Burns submit anyone, honestly. I mean, he had the arm triangle of Neil Magny, but other than that, we're going all the way back to I'm scrolling. Mike Davis in 2019, since he last submitted someone. Della Maddalena, obviously not the best defensive grappler. I think a lot of people are harder on him for that Hafez fight, but I think people are looking a little bit too deeply into that. So first and foremost, he had another fight scheduled the week before. He cut weight twice. Historically, that's really compromised most fighters, especially a guy like Della who does cut a lot. And a lot of the time he was on the ground, it was because he was jumping for guillotine. He's not going to do that here against Gilbert Burns. I think he knows better. So on the feet, I mean, he's going to be a step ahead. I think Burns is confident enough that he's going to try to strike here, maybe a little bit more than he should. So it's interesting. I think if the fight does hit the mat, Burns could be live for a submission, but you got to think Della's camp has mostly just been sprawl, raw. If you're in any of the positions that Burns favors, how to get out of them, it's just such a linear fight. And I think the distance on the feet in terms of skill at this point in their careers might be even wider. And I don't mean to say that Della can compete with Burns in the jiu-jitsu realm. He certainly can't. But in terms of defensive wrestling, like Burns is a great jiu-jitsu player, but he hasn't always done well getting his opponents to the mat. Just a 35% takedown accuracy in the UFC, averaging under 2 takedowns per 15 minutes for a primary grappler. I mean, those numbers aren't great. Obviously, he's fighting good competition, but some of those stats are back down at lightweight as well. So I don't know. Those numbers are probably skewed in both directions. So to me, that kind of cancels out. Della has an 82% takedown defense so far. Did a good job against the Meave, keeping things standing. And again, against Hafez, yes, he was taken down, but a lot of that was him shooting for guillotines, which obviously is not a good idea. But definitely not something he's ever going to try to do here against Gilbert Burns. So I'm with you on Della here. I didn't think I would be. I do think Burns is a live underdog if this fight hits the mat, but even if it does, I mean, if Della works his way back to the feet, I don't see Burns scoring much there on the mat. So I don't know. Tough fight, but would be tougher a few years ago, like you said. I'm going to side with Della here as well. I think he could find a KO, and if not, he probably picks Burns apart on the feet for 3 rounds. The wide cage or the big cage here definitely favors Della Maddalena as well. Going to be tough for Burns to get Della up against the fence and secure those takedowns.
And your thoughts, minus 170, minus 180, good price. You playing that?
Yeah, I'd play it. No, nothing bigger than just an average unit size play, but yeah, I think to win one unit, 170. If it continues to inflate, gets over 200, I'd probably back off.
Yeah.
But you could bet Della heavily and then maybe hedge with Burns by sub. I think that's something I would maybe look into, just kind of trying to arb it a little bit. But yeah, I think the money line is about where it should be, around 170.
All right. The main card opener comes up to Bantamweight. Peter Yan facing Song Yadong. Peter Yan, the slight favorite in the matchup, a near pick and fight here. I find it a very close fight to call, but kind of a buy low opportunity for Yan. Despite losing three fights in a row, it is kind of a make or break spot for Peter Yan here against another guy who's kind of up and coming in the division, but proving himself. Song Yadong is a legitimate bantamweight contender, and now he gets a great shot at the former champion to continue to build his resume. Yan cannot afford to start slow in this fight. That's kind of the case in most of his round ones. You see him kind of reading opponents, trying to get a gauge on his counters, things of the sort. Where I really don't think he could do that in a 3-round fight against a guy in Song Yadong who, certainly has more offensive aggression than a guy like Peter Yan. He's going to be moving forward more often and looking to engage, while Yan is happy to sit back, wait, look to counter. He does have the tighter boxing, and I think we're going to see striking defense play a key in this fight as Yan defends at a higher clip than Yadong does. More strikes are going to get through, I think, for Yan if he is still a fraction of what he was as the champion. I think he's going to be able to put his combinations together against Yadong, something that wasn't really the case in his past previous fights, where we've seen him taken down, we've seen him kind of stunned a bit. Song Yadong, while he does have a lot of punching power here, I don't think he's necessarily going to be the guy to get in and clip Yan. And again, it's a super close fight, but I have to side with Yan. staying the more defensively sound over the course of 15 minutes here. And again, I'm confident in him winning a round of 2 or 3, but you got to get your foot on the gas early and move forward. And hopefully he's had a camp in order to focus and do so, coming off 3 consecutive losses, albeit to very high level competition.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy to me that people are so down on Peter. I mean, the O'Malley fight, I think 90% of the world thought he won that fight. I mean, I don't think it was a robbery. It was close enough you could give it to Sean, but it's tough to be down on him for that performance against the now current champ. The Sterling fight, the second time, I mean, that was really close as well. Split decision. If he didn't get caught in that body triangle twice, he probably wins that fight. He won the 4th and 5th rounds. And then against Marab, yeah, that style just didn't really play to his favor at all. There's also rumors he was injured going into that one, regardless of whether or not you believe that. I don't know. I just think people are kind of disrespecting Peter on the line here, and I really do like Song Yadong. I think he's one of the more talented young bantamweights in the division, but we just look statistically. I mean, Peter does land more significant strikes per minute. He has the higher percentage in terms of defense. He's also more likely to get his grappling going here if he needs to. And yeah, I mean, as good as Song has been lately, like he has a win against Gutierrez, which was probably closer than it should have been. That win over Simon was really impressive, but now we're looking at Ricky Simone. Excuse me, pronounce his name wrong. But Ricky Simone, who looked terrible in the second half against Mario Batista, he seems to be kind of falling back. And other than that, we're looking at Marlon Moraes, who's long retired, and Julio Arce, who's I think off the roster now. So yeah, I mean, we look at the streaks. I mean, 4 of the last 5 wins for Song, 4 of the last 5 losses for Jan, but it's really against 2 completely different levels of competition. 2 similar fighters in terms of their style, but I do think Peter is the sharper striker, like you said, and he can mix in the grappling if he needs to. Love this fight. It's going to be fun to watch, but I think Peter does get it done here. I don't know. I've just been equally as impressed, or as impressed in his losses as I am in some of these Yadong wins. Obviously, the Marab performance was terrible. Lost every round in that one. But if the injury stuff holds true, then I don't know. I think this is the fight that we would have seen line closer to 250 or 300 a couple years ago. And yes, Yudong has looked good, but I mean, it's not like he's securing wins better than what Jan has done against Sandhagen or how he's looked in those Sterling fights. So I don't know. I'm on Peter here. Pretty confident in it. Honestly, one of my preferred money line plays this week. I will say I am biased. This is my favorite bantamweight on the roster. Has been almost since his debut. So take that with a grain of salt. Song definitely not a pushover by any stretch, but 2 very similar styles, and one guy who I think is just a little bit sharper within that style. The grappling in his back pocket to boot makes me a little bit more confident as well. So I'm on Peter here. I think he gets it done.
Yeah, and I'm certainly not biased. Picked O'Malley against Jan, but and near even money, I feel like he's the play. I mean, even 150, 160, I would probably still be going that side. So, yeah, I'm with you. All right, we'll move on now. Looking at the preliminary card, this could be a main event in itself. This heavyweight fight between Jelton Almeida and Curtis Blades. Very excited for it. It was previously booked as a main event fight back last November. Unfortunately, Blades withdrew and Lewis stepped in to get beaten handily by Jelton Almeida. I find this to be a great stylistic clash with the division's best wrestling facing off with probably the division's best grappling. Normally, traditionally wrestling beats jiu-jitsu, and well, that's not the thesis for my pick on this fight. I do find that to be the case when we look at this matchup, as was when it had first previously been announced. I think Blades is going to have a great stylistic advantage over Almeida here. What we've seen Almeida able to do thus far in the UFC, while extremely impressive, it's because he's able to score easy takedowns against not the best defensive grapplers, and that's not going to be the case going up against a dude like Curtis Blades. The traditional single leg, double leg that we see from Almeida is not going to be as easy to score against a American top tier wrestler. And I think Blades, if ever in top position in this fight, should be able to contain, control, and beat up Jelton Almeida. I think we're going to see Blades get into that position, 1 or 2 moments in this fight, rain down elbows, and put Almeida in positions that we have yet to see him in the UFC. I've been super high on Jelton Almeida, but this is going to be a brutal fight for him. I think he certainly has the tools to get it done. we've seen Almeida evolving a lot on the feet. A lot of that is a means to get to his takedown. And I would rate Blades the better striker of these two. If these two are going to engage solely standing in this matchup, I would go with the Blade side. While he's maybe less dynamic of a striker, he keeps his punches a lot tighter and he lands at a better rate. So I do think Blades in this spot is going to be, he's going to need to get to those positions in order to win. But Almeida is almost going to force that action here with the style in which we see him fight. Worth mentioning as well, again, we're recording a bit early in the week. I do want to see weigh-ins in this spot before I'm putting any heavy action down. But Almeida was fighting at light heavyweight. He was fighting lower than that just a few years ago. He's ballooned up to heavyweight and certainly fits the frame well, but Curtis Blades is a real 260, 265. And I think it's going to be a lot harder for him to get Blades down than has been a lot of the previous fighters he's gone against. So I think Blades is going to be more powerful, more measured in his attacks, and over the course of these 3 rounds, certainly look the better fighter. If Almeida's not able to get that finish early round and a half, this fight's really going to turn sour for him, and I think Blades is going to take over late.
Yeah, so admittedly, I'm not 100% decided on this one yet. I do want to spend a little bit more time. Going to use this as an opportunity to plug the article that comes out on Saturday with not only our fight picks, but our fight outcomes as well, like exactly how we think things will get done. But I'll say this, for the sake of the show here, I'll play the Almeida side a little bit. So Curtis Blades, great wrestler offensively, but defensively, just a 33% takedown defense in the UFC. Going way back to 2016 against a really mediocre fighter in Cody East, he was taken down multiple times. Alexander Volkov, that fight. Volkov, not a wrestler, tall, wiry frame, really not a grappler at all, was able to take down Curtis Blades. I mean, I don't know that the defensive grappling is anywhere near the level of the offensive grappling with Curtis Blades. And if we're talking about Blades' recent fights against Pavlovich, against Aspinall, against Dawkins, he's looking to strike first. He's really not trying to engage in grappling. And so if this is a fight that's taking place on the feet, I agree he's going to be winning striking exchanges. But if Almeida decides to shoot for the takedowns and gets his grappling going, I'm not confident that Blades is going to be defending him at a high rate. So it is really interesting. I think both these guys have really solid cardio. It is a very fun matchup in terms of styles because they're both great grapplers. But I would argue that the better defensive grappler at this point in these guys' careers is probably Almeida. And Blades, honestly, has never been that great of a defensive grappler. Part of that is no one shoots takedowns on him. But when you see it 33% for a guy that's supposed to be this amazing wrestler, we're talking about guys like Cody East and Volkov who have taken him down before. I'm not really confident that he's going to be able to keep things standing against Almeida if he's thinking strike first here, which he very well may be. He's been doing that in almost all of his fights. So I don't know. Right now, I'm kind of leaning Almeida. I just think he's the younger, more explosive fighter. I agree. I do want to see weigh-ins. He weighed 236 last time in that fight against Derek Lewis. He looked big there. Obviously, Lewis massive for the division as well, so that was good to see. But I don't know. I am not super confident in Blades' takedown defense, and if he wants to come out here and look like a striker as he has recently, doesn't get his own offensive wrestling going, then who's to say that Almeida's not winning the minutes with Blades on his back? So very interesting here. Certainly a fight I could see going either way, one I do want to spend a little bit more time on, but I think you did a good job kind of highlighting why Blades should be doing well here. I wanted to spend some time highlighting Almeida, but I do think the takedown defense for Blade might be a little bit over exaggerated. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, pick 'em fight. Certainly can't fault anyone either way. Yeah, Blade side for me. We'll move on to women's flyweight next. Macy Barber, a minus 220 favorite here against Caitlin Chookagian. Now Caitlin Saramanara. Your thoughts on this matchup? Who are you going with in this one?
Yeah, this is a tough one. I mean, Chookagian has been kind of the prospect killer her entire career. Like, we see all these young girls kind of move their way up the division. Then they get to Chook and they get kind of froze. It's kind of like what Whitaker was for a while at middleweight, what Holloway was at times for featherweight. She's kind of been that at times, even though she's never held a belt herself. Barber, certainly a prospect on the rise, has always been super highly regarded by the UFC. Typically, this is a spot where maybe I'd considered Chukagian, who did just change her name to Sarmanara. Forgive me if I'm not pronouncing that correctly, but I think I have to go with Barber here. Just watch the media for Caitlin going into this. I mean, she's been dealing with, I don't know, she suffered two miscarriages, really kind of devastated by that. Sounds like she's been kind of in a rough headspace, and understandably so. It's just really tough, I think, for her to be training while trying to get pregnant multiple times since her last fight, which took place in October of 2022. I mean, what is it, 9 months for pregnancy? I don't know. I don't want to sit here and do math on when she was pregnant and all that. It's kind of disrespectful, but just hearing where she's at mentally and hearing where Macy's at mentally, I think stylistically, Barber's going to probably push her up against the cage. In space, I do think Caitlin's the better striker of the two, but I don't know how much time this fight actually takes place in space. If it does just turn into a kickboxing match, I think she's very live as an underdog, but I think Barber at this point in her career knows what she needs to do to get it done here. It's a tough fight. I kind of have to pick Barber just based on what I'm hearing. Another one I'll probably spend a little bit more time on. Another fight that when it was announced, I kind of like the underdog. But just knowing Macy's 10 years younger, usually statistically, that definitely favors the younger fighter on a great win streak. I mean, she hasn't lost since she fell to Grasso back in 2021. Really impressive win over Ribas last time out because I did not like her performance against Andrea Lee. I felt she was kind of gifted the decision in that one, but seeing what she did to Ribas really kind of shifted my perception of her back in her favor. So I don't know. I'll spend a little bit more time here. If I find out Chukagian had an amazing camp and all this devastating stuff she's dealing with has actually provided fire for her and she's super motivated now, then maybe I'll change my mind. But the interview I just listened to doesn't have me really feeling that way. And I think stylistically, Barber pushing her up against the fence, landing big shots out of breaks is probably going to be enough to get it done over 3 rounds.
Yeah, not too much to add here. I'd say it's appropriately lined. Barber again should be able to be effective in those more clinch positions, or perhaps even going to the mat here. She's good from both stances, Macy Barber, so that should be an effective tool in closing the distance against Chukagian. Yeah, as you said, if it is a point fight, if it is kind of a boring 15-minute back and forth, that's going to favor Caitlin Chukagian. We've seen her win a lot of those fights before. Used to be Chukagian decision, just all the time. You could rely on it. I again could certainly see that happening here, and for the underdog price, will not fault anyone for going that way. But yeah, I like Barber. Looking like becoming a more complete fighter each time out. Still young at 25, and building here in this flyweight division. Should be able to get this one over on the older vet. So I will go Macy Barber with you. Next up, a lightweight fight between Mateusz Gamrot and Rafael dos Anjos. This just tells you how crazy the card is from here on up, because this is the first time RDA has been on the prelim since 2014. He's main evented, co-main event spots just constantly, staple of the promotion. And now here, perhaps a passing of the torch or turning back the new guard here at lightweight as Gamrot looks to take his ranking and continue to shoot up on the ranks. Perhaps a reason for the placement on the card could be the style of fight we may be getting here. Gamrot implementing a lot of wrestling, a lot of grappling in each fight thus far, shooting for takedowns like crazy his last time out, and RDA is just not somebody who you can rely on to defend takedowns. We've seen it all throughout his UFC career. When guys are able to shoot on him, get him to the mat, there's very little RDA can do to fight back to his feet. Normally, it's like a butt scoot back to the fence. It takes him a lot of time to regain the feet once he is taken down. And then, yeah, we've just seen him exposed on the mat time and time before when individuals are able to take him down to seize top position and kind of keep fights there. Gamrot's big for a lightweight. He's strong. I really like what I've seen out of him. He spent this whole camp training with Dustin Poirier, who co-main events at the same weight. And I think his hands are a bit underrated too. We've seen the power displayed previously during his tenure with KSW. And I think he certainly could touch up a lot of guys here in this division, but that's not going to be his course of action or game plan here against a guy like Rafael dos Anjos. He's going to look for the takedown over and over and over again here. And I think he's bigger, stronger, able to do so. Perhaps even able to get a sub just with his, Kimuras and things like that. That Gamrot's been able to pull off in the past. Very strong guy. and I think he outmuscles RDA.
I think this is the worst line on the entire card, and I can say that with confidence. Over minus 400 here seems absolutely insane to me. I mean, Gamrot has looked good, but he got that physique win on an injury. I mean, the Jalen Turner fight could have gone either way. Lost to Dariush, and then he was out grappled by Saruki. And so, yeah, I kind of disagree with you about RDA. I mean, yeah, he's able to be taken down, but he usually does do a decent job working back to his feet. I mean, going all the way back to the Colby Covington fight, I mean, that fight was a lot closer than I think most people are remembering. He was kind of dominated against Chiesa at times, but all these fights are up at 170. So is Gamrot going to be the stronger fighter here? We also got to talk about how USADA is no longer in the picture. And I don't know if you've seen RDA this week. He looks like an absolute brick at 155, maybe the best shape he's been in 5 years. I don't know. I like Gamrot here. I think he's probably the side, but at minus 400, I'm tempted to just take the dog shot off principle alone. RDA is a solid technical striker. Both these guys show 60% striking defense in their UFC's tenure, but RDA certainly faced the tougher competition, not only fighting up at 170, but at a championship level for years and years. Lands more significant strikes per minute compared to Gamrot. And if the grappling exchanges are close, I mean, yeah, maybe Gamrot will take him down a few times, but I'm not confident with him landing a ton of damage on top. So I don't know. Like initially, again, I want to side with Gamrot. I think he's the side, but the price here is absolutely insane, and I can't wrap my head around it. Minus 400. How is he the biggest favorite on the card against the former champion? And yeah, he didn't look great in that Luque fight, but I mean, he's coming back down to 155 now. He's going to be strong for the weight class, especially if he's on a bunch of juice. So I don't know, man. I'm probably going to end up on Gamrot by decision. I think this is a fight that could end in a split decision, though. It could definitely go either way. And I don't know, man. I don't think Gamrot really has the power to put down RDA. I mean, honestly, RDA might have a power advantage on the feet. This is just, again, it's two fighters whose careers are headed in different directions. I do think Gamrot is the more athletic and explosive fighter at this point in their careers, but stylistically, they're super similar. And who's to say RDA is not on one night and Gamrot's a little bit off, and that's enough to keep things close? I just, the price is killing me, and I'll spend a little bit more time digging here, but well, how can you parlay him at minus 400 plus? Like that just it really sickens me. And yeah, I think he's just being disrespected off the Luque fight, where he just didn't look good up a weight class, and now he's back probably where he should be. And I don't know, Gamrot's look good, but not dominant by any stretch.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the style and just takedown after takedown from Gamrot that'll probably be the case in why the line is where it's at. I don't think too many
Well,
people are out looking to
what the
disrespect
line
the
is
former champion.
I mean, he should be the favorite. I totally agree. But like, what are we doing here? I mean, I don't know. Like, oh, and the other thing I forgot to bring up, Renato Mocanho, he kind of started. He has like a podcast now where he talks about fights and things like that. And he is from American Top Team, spent a lot of time training with Gamrot, and he says that he thinks RDA is the better grappler in this matchup by a decent margin. So take that for what it's worth. I don't know. But that alone had me kind of thinking. And then I'm looking at the line and I'm just kind of dumbfounded. So I don't know. I do think Gamrot's the better fighter. He's younger, he's faster, he's going to secure takedowns, but the price is way off. And if you take what Moicano says even a little seriously, it has to make you scratch your head just a bit.
Yeah, we'll see. He shared the cage with RDA. So I mean,
Yeah.
if he's training with Gamrot too, certainly could be an edge there. Good luck if you do take the steep underdog. We'll move on now. The prelim opener: Pedro Munoz and Kyler Phillips at bantamweight. Interesting fight. I mean, Munoz, we've seen him the last time out against Vera. Wasn't the worst performance. Honestly, the past couple showings from Munoz still holding his own, even as he is fighting at bantamweight at 37 years old. Not usually a recipe for success, but with someone with a great chin, with someone who has good staying power, Munoz has been able to make it work. He's a live dog in this spot here against Kyler Phillips. I think Kyler Phillips, honestly, training at the MMA lab, his affiliation with O'Malley, reason for the placement on this card. But O'Malley certainly knows Munoz well too, not only keeping his name in his mouth quite a bit, but fighting prior, poking him in the eye. I think Kyler Phillips probably was a key factor in that camp, as well as, looking at this camp, O'Malley could provide some insight into the approach when facing Pedro Munoz. As with most people, Kyler Phillips has the reach advantage over Munoz, but in this fight, he will benefit from a 7-inch edge in reach. Munoz will have a tough time closing the distance and looking to land with his heavy hands on Phillips here. I think Phillips, too, the more dynamic striker, able to mix it up more, uses kicks to better effect. Should be able to keep the distance for a large portion of this fight here facing Munoz, and likely will find more opportunities to score than the Brazilian. So I do edge for Phillips in this spot, although slightly. The line, while it's stayed about the same, is starting to swing a bit heavier towards Phillips' favor, which I do not like. I probably would not be betting him at a minus 220 at this point. But I do think he is going to be the more complete athlete in the spot, able to score takedowns if he needs on Pedro Munoz. We've seen Kyler Phillips effectively grapple a lot before. High level jiu-jitsu out of the guy. I don't think he's going to put Munoz in a sub or anything like that. But certainly he should be winning more minutes of this fight. It seems to me like a matter of whether or not Munoz can connect, land that big shot.
Yeah, this is interesting. Another fight I'm not 100% decided on, which has kind of been a trend for the last few, but I don't know. I think this is a good matchup, kind of for both these guys. So Phillips trying to break his way into the rankings, coming off a pretty solid win over Barcelos. I mean, the win over Rojo, you can't put too much into that. Lost to Paiva in a weird way, where I think he underperformed, and then beat Song Yadong, which I think he overperformed. So jury's kind of still out on Phillips. Definitely a young, talented fighter, really dynamic, like you said. Gifted striker, does a good job mixing kicks into his combinations, things like that. Is a submission threat when fights hit the mat, but we have seen him kind of fade late in fights at times, and that's what kind of makes this interesting to me. I mean, Munoz did look okay against Cheeto. I definitely think he's kind of, I don't know, slowing down for lack of a better word, but really good takedown defense. And it's just going to be a matter of if he can close the distance on Phillips or if Phillips kind of makes the mistake of striking and close with Munoz. Because I do think Phillips, the clear path to victory here is just keep your distance, fight at range, kind of pick him apart, which is probably what O'Malley was going to do against Munoz if that fight didn't end via eye poke early. But at the same time, I mean, I actually think Munoz could maybe secure a takedown or two here, make things interesting. If he can get him up against the fence, that's another way to kind of keep the distance close. Because at range, Phillips is going to be the better striker, but in close, I actually think Munoz is the more dynamic, or not dynamic, just a more dangerous boxer of the two. So another fight I'm not entirely decided on. I think the main reason for that's the price. Like if it was closer to a pick, I'd probably just take Phillips, but I think I'm going to spend a little bit more time and maybe try to justify a play on the underdog here, just because he's looked good against really elite competition. I mean, beat Gutierrez as a heavy underdog, fought close with Marlon Vera in a fight that probably couldn't go either way, but wouldn't have shocked anyone. He was dominating Dominic Cruz before he started to fade in that fight, and Cruz took over late. And then we're back talking about Jose Aldo, which, yeah, I don't think Phillips at that point in his career would have had much success against Aldo either. So I don't know. I think this deserves a little bit more time on my end. I do think the value side is definitely Munoz right now. But yeah, Phillips, kind of an inconsistent performer at his best. I think he gets this done at range. But if he's not at his best, Munoz has proven to be a really tough out. So one that could go either way. Value's probably on Munoz right now. I'm yet to kind of finalize my pick, but I do think Phillips is the rightful favorite.
Yeah, and I mean, just I said Phillips, but then again, another couple days. If I'm looking for an underdog, this card doesn't have too many I love. Munoz is one of the live ones. Moving on now, we'll take a look at the early prelims. This a bout at light heavyweight between Michelle Pereira and Michelle Olajaychek. Both named Michelle here.
Mikal and Michelle.
About the same. Which Michelle are you going with? Pereira, the slight favorite, minus 150 the current time.
Yeah, man, this is kind of interesting. I'm kind of leaning Pereira right now. I mean, he was climbing the ranks at 170 before he missed weight to fight Wonder Boy. Now he's up at 185, and the knock on him has always been cardio and durability, but I think moving up a weight class, he kind of erases maybe those holes in his game. Oleg Jacek's super dangerous. Another guy who's changed weight classes wow, I can't talk today. Weight classes, he came down from 205, but he was just like a fluffy, out of shape 205er. He should have always been at 185. So I think these guys are kind of meeting in the middle now where they're supposed to be. Ola Jacek definitely has a power advantage here, but I'd probably give every other category to Pereira. I'm not worried about the cardio anymore. He is a guy who averages over a takedown and a half per 15 minutes, so he can mix in the grappling. And I think that's his clearest path to victory here, honestly. Ola Jacek, less than a 50% takedown defense. He struggled when he is put on his back. Pereira, dynamic enough striker that I think he can close the distance and then secure the takedowns if he needs to. If he doesn't, this is probably a very close fight unless Oleg does catch him with something because we've seen Pereira more often than not fight to the level of his opponent. When it is just a 3 round kickboxing fight. So I don't know. Pereira, early in his career, doing backflips, making tons of dumb mistakes, but he's been fighting more at Extreme Couture recently with Eric Nisick and all the sharp minds in there. I think that's done wonders for his career. Also, moving up a weight class, like I said, does help kind of shore up some of those holes in his game. And it's not like he's going to be a small 185er. I mean, these guys have virtually the same reach. Pereira's actually the taller fighter at 6'1". So, yeah, I do favor him here. This should be a fun one, and Oleg's power can kind of take anyone out, so I don't want to get too invested on either side. But I do think Pereira, just the more well-rounded fighter, just slightly better in terms of technical ability, and I do like the move in weight classes for him as well. So a fun fight, certainly, probably takes place mostly at striking range, but I think as long as Pereira keeps his chin tucked, he should be able to get this one done.
Yeah, Ola Jacek, obviously the bigger power threat. I would agree with you there. I think also sort of a situation where the early round and a half is going to be key for Ola Jacek getting the win here. Over the course of 15 minutes, I think flat out Michel Pereira is the better fighter. We've seen more complete fights out of him, over the course of his UFC tenure. Obviously, yeah, now up at middleweight, as you had mentioned, a change for Pereira. I think he's going to be a step slower as well, but yeah, able to take more shots, able to, obviously carry that gas tank into the latter half of fights. And Olacechek's somebody who tends to sort of fall off as we get into, rounds 2 and 3. Also with Michelle Olajechek, somebody who we've seen kind of struggle on the mat when taken down. Pereira not always one to initiate, but scores takedowns when available to him, and certainly has shown the ability to advance positions, get to the back, threaten with chokes in some of these fights as well. So I think that could be the case here, but more likely than not, these two will spend a prolonged period striking on the feet, which makes it as about where it lies, closer to Pick'em than where I would line it a bit more on the Pereira side. So I think he does get the better of Jacek here. Probably extends this fight, and whether it be round 2, round 3 by decision, Pereira should be able to pay off that price tag, get a win, unless it is Jacek clipping him early, landing something crazy out of that southpaw stance and, putting Pereira down. Certainly could happen, but I don't see it happening this weekend. I'm going to go with the Brazilian. Looking next, another Brazilian light heavyweight, Felipe Lins and Ion Cutelaba. This was a fight booked last fall, but Lins pulled out. I'm really not a fan of this Felipe Lins guy. I don't think he always puts forth the best effort, not only in his fights, but as we saw last time when it came to making the walk on fight day. This is probably the most volatile fight on the card. Really can't feel great either side here. I think last time this was booked, I ended up on the Cutelaba side, you on Lins, I believe. But I mean, Lins the better boxer here, going to be the more effective fighter. Over the course of a striking match. Cutelaba looking to rush in with big exchanges, land powerful strikes as needed, but probably try and get this fight to the mat as well. Again, Lins is somebody who we've seen not very effective when put onto his butt, but when it comes to offensive grappling, certainly has the chops to do so at this level. Certainly against a guy like Cutelaba, who we've seen choked out before. So a very volatile fight, one that probably could get extended by either man, just based on their fight style and not always the most aggressive. But I see Lins trying to box, Cutelaba trying to grapple, these two clashing in the middle, and probably an early finish one way or the other. So still a bit torn on this one, leaning the way of the Cutelaba who is slightly favored at this time, -135. But curious to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I was actually on Kudalaba last time as well. I think I am again here, but not confidently. Linz has actually looked really good since he's moved down to 205 and probably getting back on steroids after leaving the PFL. He had a really ugly run at heavyweight, losing to Arlovsky and Bozer. But then when he moved down, I mean, that win against Pacquiao is aging decently now, with Pacquiao coming off a win. OSP and Grisham, I mean, definitely in the twilight of their careers. But, I mean, he's shown pretty quality boxing, better defensive striking than I think many expected out of him. He is capable of securing takedowns, and he does show 100% takedown defense in the UFC. So if we're talking like technical ability, like if this were to go 15 minutes, I would favor Linz. But Kudalaba, yeah, like you said, most volatile fight on the card, probably just because Kudalaba is involved. He's always comes out like he shot out of a cannon, absolute animal early, but a very low fight IQ. I mean, makes mistakes, shoots for takedowns when he shouldn't. Um, he lets guys up when he shouldn't. I mean, I don't know, overexerts himself to the point that he's gassing out in the second round where he obviously shouldn't. So if Kudalaba comes out and wipes Linz off the floor, I mean, he's definitely going to look like the rightful favorite here. But if Linz can keep things standing, kind of stretch this out, maybe I don't know, clinch Kudalaba against the fence for a little bit, kind of work on that gas tank. I could see him maybe pulling away. I want to do a little bit more research into why Lynn's pulled out. It's listed as a medical issue. I remember when that happened because it didn't get announced till the day of the fight. But yeah, I don't know. I lean Kudalaba to take him out early, but if he can't, Lynn's probably gets it done. So again, it's a volatile fight. I think whoever wins looks like a clear favorite here. But yeah, I mean, it's lined very closely for a reason. So I don't know. Want to probably spend a little bit more time on Kudalaba, definitely the more potent finisher. But we have seen his kind of durability fall and fail him at times. Finished 3 fights in a row before he got that kind of weird win over Bozer last time out. So I don't know. I'm on Kudalaba. Zero confidence, though. I'm going to spend a little bit more time digging into this one, and don't be shocked if I end up flipping my pick.
All right. Well, if you like the light heavyweights, how about heavyweight with Robelis Despain making his UFC debut here against Josh Parisian. This is a guy who a lot of people are eager to see on this UFC 299 card. Despain 4-0 as a UFC pro. His last 3 fights all in under a combined 20 seconds. This guy is a Taekwondo specialist, very technical striker, while surprisingly boasting a 6'7" height and an 87-inch reach. This guy has incredibly long reach, something I oftentimes target and look for at heavyweight because the punches will land faster and be much harder than in those lower weight classes. So Despain is a problem. If he's able to land, if he's able to, find that shot early, he's certainly going to be able to wipe out a lot of these lower level guys, especially somebody the likes of Parisian. And then on the flip side, we haven't seen this guy extended late, forced to fight. And that could be something even a low level guy like Parisian, if able to get into round 2, into round 3, make this an ugly scrap, can certainly get the better of a guy like Despain, who's a bit one dimensional. But I don't think that's going to be the case. This guy's huge. He hits hard. Parisian's nothing special. I think this is kind of a handpicked by the UFC for the debut of Despain, and I think he should be able to get the job done against a guy like Parisian here. Parisian, he's decent on the feet, but he doesn't hit anywhere near as hard, and it's going to be a daunting task for him to just try and survive the first round. And then work from there. Obviously, it'd be a lot of clinch work from Parisian, trying to land higher volume than what Despain, puts out over the latter half of this fight. But yeah, I think it's going to be a tall task for him to get there. Watch the highlights of this guy. Despain is he's a freak. I'm not going to say I'm eager to bet him, but certainly there's one way to play it. If he's -325, -350, you're going to want to look at the Despain KO or round 1 prop. If you're putting money on that side of this fight.
Yeah, there's really not much to add here. The UFC is setting up him to get a win in this spot. He's Cuban. Not many Cuban fighters on the UFC roster. Miami has a massive Cuban population. This guy has His last 3 wins via knockout for Fury FC. Let's see here, 19 total seconds it took him to record those 3 KOs. Obviously, not taking on a great level of competition, but I don't think Parisian's even much better than those guys he's beating. Parisian only wins have come against guys who are no longer on the UFC roster. He's slow, he's plotty. I agree. If he can somehow extend this fight, he'd be live for the upset, but the likelihood of that seems pretty much slim to none. I think this guy comes out here, completely intimidates Parisian, knocks him out in the first probably 30 seconds. Not going to spend too much time on it. I will say I'll probably have a play on round one, probably have a play on KO. If I am parlaying him, it's definitely going to be inside the distance. Again, I don't want to see this extended. If it does, it's going to get ugly. Parisian will be live as an underdog, but they're setting it up. Miami, massive Cuban population. Put the Cuban fighter on the card. Give him the spot here where he can get a nice highlight reel KO. Getting late into his MMA career, he's 35 years old, debuting with only 4 wins on his record, but he does have a bronze medal in Taekwondo. So yeah, I don't love him as a prospect because I think he's going to be exposed against grapplers. But against Josh Parisian, who's not much more athletic than some of the guys that are going to be in the crowd that day, I'm very comfortable backing him here, even as a big favorite. Again, sometimes you just got to follow the marketing vehicle. I think that's what we have here.
Yeah. Feel good about that pick. Next up, flyweights, a matchup between Asu Almabayev and CJ Vergara. Almabayev moving from -450, now ballooning -600 most places. You could have him in this spot. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, I'm not going to spend too much time on this one, but I will say I think Almabayev is certainly the rightful favorite. The line does feel a little bit wide, but he should be able to work this fight to the mat where he's going to be the much better grappler. I mean, Vergara, if anything, he's shown to be really durable. He does have really good cardio. He can take a beating. But that win against Salvador, I mean, he went life and death with Lacerda. Obviously, got dominated against Tyra, who's another grappler. Tyra struggling to find submissions at times, was able to find it there against Vergara. So I think we can expect that from Almabayev here. He's very small, but he does train with Shavkat Rakhmonov, future title contender at 170. Kazakhstan, suddenly a market that the UFC may be looking to exploit a bit. I like this kid. I think he's talented. Another guy who's kind of getting a late start, 30-year-old flyweight, does feel a little bit old, but at the same time, he does have some solid wins. Fighting for Brave FC regionally, actually faced a decent level of competition. Looked great against Ode Osborne, really broke him after that first round, and I think we see more of that here. So unless Bagara can somehow survive, and then Almabayev gasses himself out trying to finish him, I think Almabayev is going to look like the rightful favorite. Probably finds a submission in the first or second round.
Yeah, I like the kid a lot too. One of those pro wins also, a long time ago, but against Yer Ulanbekov, nothing to mind in, your third or fourth pro fight. Yeah, Almabayev obviously wants to take this fight to the mat and should be effective in doing so. I think it was 3 for 8, those takedowns for Tyra against CJ Vergara. Even if he's defending a few here against Almabayev, this is a guy who's going to press forward and continue to hunt for those takedowns. I think he has an edge in this fight when the fight hits the mat, but his striking okay. I don't want him to go long periods on the feet with Vergara, but Almabayev has proven to be a complete fighter. I think if he's able to get Vergara onto his back, it's going to be, a rather easy night at the office for him. It's hard to imagine he pays off this -600 price tag. I mean, flyweights, we've seen all these flyweight fights the past couple of weeks. A lot are a lot closer than they seem to be, and certainly when the betting windows close. So I could see Vergara, ruining some parlays here early if he's able to extend this to decision. But largely, Almabayev should be scoring, not only getting takedowns, but working from there and landing offensive strikes. All right, and the first fight of the night. So again, the card beginning 6 p.m. on Saturday from Miami, opening with Marina Moroz, -240 favorite against Joanne Wood. I find it hard to bet Moroz -240, now up to -275. Coming off of 2 losses, I do find her to be the much more complete fighter. She's looked better, even in losses than Joanne Wood has recently in wins. Wood hyper aggressive, clinch work is going to be key to success here against Moroz. We're going to see Marina Moroz look better when these two are competing at distance. Wood will probably be able to outstrike her if she so chooses, but it's not like the better strikes are going to be coming that way. Joanne Wood does not seem to hit very hard here at flyweight, and I think it is going to be an uphill battle for her to earn this win here at age 38. But I still got to dig a bit more into this fight to provide some solid analysis. I do feel Moreau's probably the rightful favorite though, and side for good reason. I just probably would not ever get to the window with her now she balloons to minus 275.
Yeah, so I think the reason the line's so inflated is Wood said this is her retirement fight. Whenever we hear that it's a fighter's retirement fight, usually they come out and look terrible, unless their name is Robbie Lawler. But yeah, I think Moroz is the side here, the better grappler. We saw in her fight against Agapova, and even dating back to when she fought Bueno Silva, who's fought for the title recently, just able to get her grappling going and win in those positions. If this fight takes place on the feet, Wood's a very live underdog. But I think coming off 2 losses, Moroz is just going to know what she needs to do to get it done here. I don't think she's going to play in the middle like we've seen her do at times recently. So I think Moroz is the side. Do I want to bet her at this price? Certainly not. Have I given this fight enough attention compared to some of these others this week? Probably not. But I think stylistically and just knowing Wood is got 1 foot out the door, I'm probably going to have to back Moroz here as the favorite.
Yeah, let's move on from that one. And again, we're looking forward to Saturday. These a lot of awesome fights. Maybe not that one included from Miami. Yeah, it should be good. UFC 299. Nick, thank you as always for joining. And be sure to check out our article Saturday morning on Dine Sports for our official picks and predictions. Thank you, everyone.